Hari Om, dear friends. Welcome to the channel once again. Today we'll talk about the story The Black Aeroplane, which is full of fantasy, full of mystery. But before that, let me tell you that the story was written by Frederick Forsyth, a British journalist, writer, and this story basically talks about a black mysterious aeroplane. But before that, again, I want you to imagine something, as always I do with you. What if you see something which does not exist? What if your mind is occupied with beautiful memories, but when you strike reality, or when reality strikes you, you realize that it's completely different from what you had expected that to be? The story talks about certain things in the similar manner. Although the story has got an autobiographical note, the story is written in autobiographical style. The first person singular pronoun has been used to write the story, but as and how the story ends, you will come to know that whatever the speaker was fascinating about, whatever he was fancying about, whatever reality he thought about, it's something totally different, something totally opposite. He was completely disillusioned. Details about the author, as I share with you in the beginning of every video, I shall do it this time also. I'll just start off with the explanation so that you understand the explanation, and I request all of you to go through the text while you watch the video. The moon was coming up in the east behind me, and the stars were shining in the clear sky above me. There wasn't a cloud in the sky. I was happy to be alone high up above the sleeping countryside. So the story begins on a note of imagery again. Beautiful situations, beautiful scenery has been portrayed, nature's beauty has been portrayed, and it's very evident that the speaker was in an aeroplane. The protagonist, the speaker, was in an aeroplane and he was driving it. So the moon was coming up in the east behind the speaker, and the stars were shining. Perfect conditions that you find for a plane to fly in the sky. And he was happy to fly alone. I was flying my old Dakota aeroplane over France back to England. I was dreaming of my holiday and looking forward to being with my family. The speaker is a very family-loving person. And it can be made out that he had been working very hard, and he had already, he was experiencing a stressful life, after which he got some time to spend with his family. So all the beautiful thoughts of meeting his family, all the lovely moments that he could cherish with his family came to life, and he was gripped with all those memories of his family. So he was flying a Dakota aeroplane, and he was dreaming of his family and looking forward to being with his family. I looked at my watch, 1:30 in the morning. So the lines are very simple here. The lines are very simple, and you need to understand that the pilot was very eager to meet his family, and he was fantasizing, he was fancying, he was craving to meet his family. That crave was still there in his mind, in his heart, which is very obvious, because when professionals are apart from their families, when they're away from their families, it is very natural, because generally they do not get time to spend with their families. And finally, when this gentleman got the opportunity to fly back home, he was occupied with the sweet memories and the desires of being with his family. I should call Paris control soon, I thought, as I looked down past the nose of the aeroplane. I saw the light of a big city in front of me. I switched on the radio and said, "Paris control, Dakota 088 here. Nothing to worry." I mean, from the point of the speaker, he could see a city, he could see lights in front of him, and he wanted to reach the control room, and that is the reason why he passed his message to the control room. "Can you hear me? I'm on my way to England, over." And that is how pilots generally communicate with the control rooms of the countries and cities they pass by. The voice from the radio answered me immediately. "DS088, I can hear you. You ought to turn 12 degrees west now, DS088, over." So proper guidance being given by the control room, I checked the map and the compass, switched over to my second and last fuel tank, and turned the Dakota 12 degrees west towards England. The man was flying back home, and whenever a pilot flies, he needs guidance, and this gentleman also sought guidance from the control room that he was crossing, he was passing by. So he thought that now that he received proper guidance, so he did as the control room had guided him. He turned the aeroplane 12 degrees and he kept on flying. But also he kept an eye on the fuel tank. He had his compass. These are some important. A compass is an important equipment. If you do not have that in an aeroplane, it is practically of no use. You need to have a compass. You need to have. These days, aeroplanes have GPS systems and all those things, very, very technologically advanced, but then these things are very much required. So he thought to himself, I'll be in time for breakfast. I thought a good, big English breakfast. Everything was going well. It was an easy flight. And that is where life tests us. Let me tell you, my dear friends, whenever we think of something happening, life has got different plans. This pilot, this gentleman, the protagonist, the speaker, was completely lost in the thoughts of meeting his family after so many days, enjoying with the family. Sweet memories were haunting him, and his entire mind was gripped with gripped with nostalgia. And he kept on flying, but he did not know what was in reserve for him. And that is where life is very unpredictable. In my lectures previously also, I have been telling you that literature talks about certain messages. Literature gives us certain, lessons of life. And one very important thing is that life is very unpredictable. Paris was about 150 kilometers behind me when I saw the clouds. The scenario began to change. The scene began to change. Suddenly he saw thick clouds in front of him. Storm clouds, and it's very dangerous, let me tell you. For all those people out there, whoever has traveled by an aeroplane, you know how risky it is. Especially when the plane is flying and there is huge storm in the sky, or probably lightning, thunder. It's very dangerous for any kind of flight, for any kind of an aeroplane. So there were huge clouds. They looked like black mountains. Simile has been used here. The clouds have been compared to black mountains. Standing in front of me across the sky, I knew I could not fly up and over them. And I did not have enough fuel to fly around them to the north or south. So this is the unpredictability of life. He was under the impression that he would be reaching his family and would be able to have breakfast with them, a big English breakfast, sumptuous breakfast. But he did not have an idea that the situations could take a turn for the worse. He kept on fascinating, he kept on thinking, he kept on imagining on a different frequency altogether. But life had different plans for him. So there was not much fuel left in his aeroplane so that he could, fly across the cloud. That was not possible. So altogether, he was in a dangerous situation, in a very risky situation. And that is exactly why I told you that life is very unpredictable. It does not tell you what's in reserve. I ought to go back to Paris, I thought, but I wanted to go home. He wanted to get home. So on one hand, he had his life. On the other hand, he had his family. And he tried to come out of that gruesome, uncouth kind of a situation. Somehow, anyhow, he wanted that breakfast. And that is what tells us again of life. In our lives, we also come across many, situations that are unpleasant. But the best part is, we always try to take steps to overcome those situations as much as we can. So at this point of time also, this speaker wanted to come out of that situation on his own, because if he gave it a try, that is what he thought, and definitely that was a fact, that if he gave it a try, he would be able to be with his family at the right time. But if he went back to Paris, it would have been very risky again, because he had no fuel left in his aeroplane. I'll take the risk. And that is why he decided to take the risk, I thought, and flew that old Dakota straight into the storm. And that is what he decided. That is what his conscience drove him to do. He wanted to be with his family. He wanted that breakfast. And that is the reason why he decided to drive straight into the globe of clouds that he found in front of him. Inside the clouds, everything was suddenly black. So definitely it's a risky situation. It was impossible to see anything outside the aeroplane. The old aeroplane jumped and twisted in the air. I looked at the compass. I couldn't believe my eyes. The compass was turning round and round and round. Now imagine What could the pilot have felt? On one hand, he had been thinking about his family. He had been fascinating about his family. He had been contemplating over being with his family. On the other hand, reality was very different. He could not have gone back to Paris because he knew that there was hardly fuel left to fly back again. So that desperation to be with his family, that drove him, that instigated him to drive into the clouds. But when he reached into the clouds, when he kept on driving, reality was even more dangerous and risky because he could see nothing outside, which is very obvious, which is very, very, very certain to happen. It was dead. Even the compass was dead. Now, a compass, as I was telling you, is a very integral component for any ship or an aeroplane. Because as you know, that a compass, directs you, guides you in the right direction and defines the proper geographical way. But at this point of time, even the compass stopped functioning. It would not work. The other instruments were suddenly dead. And the other instruments were also dead. I tried the radio. Paris control, can you hear me? And at that point of time, we understand the value of life. The value of life, the value of family is suddenly understood when we are in trouble. And that is what is happening at this point of time in the story. There was no answer. So Paris control room was silent because it could not get the messages from the speaker. The radio was dead too. I had no radio, no compass, and I could not see where I was. Everything blacked out. No possibility of an escape. And he was lost in the storm. Then in the black clouds quite near me, I saw another aeroplane, and this is where the story takes a mysterious turn, making the story an open-ended story. Now, basically, stories are of two types, let me tell you. An open-ended story and a closed-ended story. Open-ended stories are those stories, where the solution is not provided by the author. Whereas closed-ended stories are those stories where the solution, the conclusion is properly mentioned by the author. When we go through the conclusion, you will be able to understand even better why I said so. Because the story ends in a very abrupt manner, leaving the readers to think what might have happened. And that is the reason why I said it's an open-ended story. So he saw another aeroplane. It had no lights on the wings, but I could see it flying next to me through the storm. I could see the pilot's face turned towards me. I was very glad to see another person. He lifted one hand and waved. If I analyze this situation critically, I must tell you, the greatest question that a person has to answer in life is survival. So at this point of time, when he saw that there was another pilot beside him who was driving another plane beside him, thank God he had a sigh of relief. He gave out a sigh of relief, thanking God that there was somebody who probably was in the same situation as he was in. I was very glad to see another person. He lifted one hand and waved. "Follow me," he was saying. "Follow me." Who was this person? Who was this pilot? We do not know. But the fact is that this pilot, the pilot of the other aeroplane, the second aeroplane, actually came to help this speaker. He knows that I'm lost, I thought. He's trying to help me. He turned his aeroplane slowly to the north in front of my Dakota so that it would be easier for me to follow him. I was very happy to go behind the strange aeroplane like an obedient child. And this is the mantra of existence. Life is equal to hope, is equal to optimism. And when you are stuck up in dire distress, or probably when you are stuck up in distressful situations, you don't find your way out of that situation anyhow, even a small ray of hope means a lot to you. That aeroplane which had come had no lights. However, the speaker did not use any kind of logic to analyze anything. The only thing that was going on in his mind was his priority. His priority to be safe, his priority to survive, and his priority to be with his family. Three basic things were going on in his mind at that point of time, and that is the reason why existing or existentialism became most important for this particular speaker. So today I'll be teaching till here. I want you to read the story and listen to the explanation once again. This story basically talks about a mysterious black aeroplane. And that is the reason why I said that the story is an open-ended story, because when the story ends, you will read, you will have to make out from where did the aeroplane come from, how did the aeroplane come all of a sudden in that particular place in the sky to save him. And that is the fun of life. Sometimes miracles happen. Sometimes, mysterious things happen. Although they do not contain any logic in them whatsoever, but they happen. So with that, I come to the end of today's lecture. I hope you understood whatever I explained to you. Stay safe, take care of yourselves and your families. Hari Om.